30 seconds. I'm on task. Give me 1 sec. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board and ask for the call of roll.
Dan Richardson,
Present.
Ben Ring,
Present.
Kristen Lovick,
Present.
Tim McLaughlin,
Present.
Scott Hagee is absent. Marcus Swift is absent. Walter Dinstedt,
Present.
Bill Amory,
Here.
and that's Delster.
Present.
Very good. We have a quorum. I'd like for those who can to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is the approval of minutes. Is there anybody that has any corrections or comments to those minutes? Oh, thank you. I jumped an item. Next item of business is actually the approval of the agenda, and there's one change to that, or one amendment, and that is the presentation tonight. Item 6A is not from the University of Oregon. It's actually from Lewis and Clark. It's a Lewis and Clark student presentation. It should be equally gripping and worthwhile. Are there any other proposed changes or needs or edits to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I would second.
Very good. Is there further discussion? Saying none, everybody please say aye or raise your hand in favor. Aye. Are there any abstentions or opposition? None. Next item of business is approval of the minutes from our February 17th meeting. A meaty meeting with much going on. Are there any edits or comments from the board? Thank you for preparing those. A good record of our doings. Seeing no edits, can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the amended minutes from the Urban Renewal Agency February 17th, 2026 meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Absent further discussion, I would say all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there any abstention or opposition? None. Seeing none, motion passes. With the approval of the board, I'm going to make a minor switch to the agenda that we just approved and put public comment next. So item 7 before item 6. Is there anyone from the public, either in person or online, who would like to make any comment with regard to urban renewal matters tonight? Anybody online? Speak now if anybody has general comments or questions. Seeing none, we'll move along with our presentation from Lewis and Clark. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, board. As we've got an update from our last meeting from Evan Stover, our intern from Lewis and Clark. He's been working for the last 4 weeks on this presentation for you, and I will let Evan take it over and show you what he's learned.
Thank you, Jacob. Let me go ahead and share my screen. A little bit ahead of myself. Whee! All right, can you all see my screen?
You can.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jacob, for the introduction. I hope y'all remember me from a couple weeks ago when I introduced the project I was going to be working on. And by the way, happy St. Patrick's Day. I swore I wore green earlier today, but I didn't have a green tie. I tried my best. So don't pinch me virtually. But to the matter at hand. This is going to be an update of the 4 weeks that I've been working on. I've been building up an inventory of the downtown of the Dalles, and I'll briefly go over what that downtown actually means and what that zone looks like. And then I'll go over the vacancy list that is a working list at this point. But the point of this presentation is to introduce the conversation of this project, to give you guys the hard data that I've been collecting within the downtown of the Dalles. So when I'm talking about there we go. When I'm talking about the downtown of the Dalles, I'm actually talking about the central business commercial zone. Just to specify, that's that blue line within that blue line. So East 2nd, East 3rd, East 4th, so on, so forth from there. This is the zone that I'll be working within for this inventory and have been. And this was recommended by Jacob, and this seems to be the zone that's been utilized previously. So we're keeping that consistent. So I'm going to be going street by street, talking about the different business types that I've collected. And then at the end, it's going to be aggregated and also included in the analysis with the vacancy list or the working vacancy list. And so we're going to start with East 2nd, West 2nd, and side streets within one block. When I'm talking about side streets within one block, that means side streets going towards 1st Street from East 2nd and also towards 3rd Street. This is going to be the biggest region of streets, and I'll clarify that going forward, what side streets I'm talking about. But that's within this region. And within this region, there is 134 total businesses that I identified for the inventory. And that's going to look like 1 in the information sector, 1 in the one landmark, 3 entertainment businesses, and then a huge jump to 29 for food and drink, 41 in retail, and then 59 in service. So there's a pretty healthy mix here for 44% being in service, then 30% for retail, 22% for food and drink. And of course, you can note that entertainment is super slim and small within this combination of streets. And the next slide, I'm going to talk about what that service looks like, the different types of service businesses. But for now, the top non-service business types. We have 4 cafes on this street, 3 pubs, 3 wineries, 3 bakeries, and 2 gift shops. So when we look at the service mixture then, so the service sector, you can see that on this combination of streets, the largest percentage of the pie is personal and trade service businesses. And that's going to be 32 total businesses there for personal and trade. Going over the others, so there's 1 civic and social business or service business, 1 educational service, 7 health and social services, 2 in hospitality and tourism, and then 13 professional and financial. So then we go over to East 3rd. So we're going to look at East 3rd Street, West 3rd Street, and then the side streets within one block. So those are going to be going south towards East 4th Street for those side streets within one block, just to specify. And now you can see that the service types actually increase of the overall total of those 60 total businesses that have been identified within those regions of streets. And to make that 60, there are 2 entertainment businesses, 6 for food and drink, 13 in retail, and then a huge jump up to 39 in service. Now, when we're looking at the top non-service business types, there's 4 gas stations. That's pretty consistent for this street, and there's no gas stations on the other streets within the CBC zone. So that's kind of the main overlapping business for that region. And then the rest are just equal to 1 business type, diversified throughout. And so when we're looking at the service mixture here, we can see there's a better diversity between personal and trade now is at 8 total businesses. Professional and financial actually increases to 14, and then health and social goes up to 7. Civic and social is 2, educational 1, government and institution 4, religious 1, and then telecommunications at 2. And you'll kind of see this trend going forward, but professional and financial is going to be increasing as we go further back in those streets towards the boundaries of the zone, towards 5th, 4th, and 6th, or in 7th, because they're able to sustain themselves better with that less foot traffic as you go backwards. So we go to the next, East 4th Street, and you can see now that service really starts to ramp up. The story is unfolding of service really pumping up as you go further back towards the edge of the zone. Now it's at 73% of the 33 total businesses within these streets. So that's going to look like 1 in the information sector, 1 landmark, 1 nonprofit, 2 entertainment, 2 food and drink, 2 retail, and then a huge jump to 24 service businesses. And the top non-service business types within this regiment of streets, it's diversified for 1 each. There's no overlap. So that's 1 art center, 1 boutique shop, 1 ice cream shop, so on and so forth. But as we go into the service mixture, you can see here the big 3 remain to be health and social with 6, personal and trade with 6, and professional and financial with 6 as well. And then further clarifying 1 civic and social, 1 government and institution, 2 hospitality and tourism, 1 public service utility, and then 1 telecommunications. Again, we have that diversity as we go further back, but it's very strong in the service industry. And now we get a collection for East 5th, 6th, 7th, and adjacent side streets. It is all service, but granted 14 total businesses as you really get close to that residential area. It's pretty hard to sustain yourself as a business as you get that far back. So it makes sense that this is all service, but I just thought it was fun that it was a big dot as a pie chart. But you look into that mixture, it's going to be 1 civic and social, 3 government and institution, 4 health and social, 3 professional and financial, and 3 religious. Now, this is the vacancy list, and at the end, I will go into the aggregate of all of that. But first, I want to talk about the vacancies so we can relate the two. This is a working list. This was compiled last week. There are still some contacts that haven't gotten back to me because at least for the for lease office spaces, some of these are listed on Facebook posts or Craigslist. That can be a little shifty. So I've reached out to get more information and I'm waiting for that to come back. So this is a working list and the priority of this is just a conversational piece. I just want to get that ahead of time. But now looking at the vacant buildings. So Jacob and I worked with Brian Lauterbach from Windermere, and he gave us a list of vacant buildings that are either actively listed or are owned, but nothing is happening within them. And then I took the liberty of going online to finding active listings. That culminated in 21 buildings in the CBC zone that are vacant. Now, 8 of these vacancies are on East 2nd Street, 4 are on East 3rd Street, 2 on Union Street, and the rest, there's 1 on different individual streets going up to 4th Street. Now, for the for lease, there are 11 office spaces that I could find online. Again, working list. There are 3 on East 2nd Street, 2 on Washington Street, 1 on East 3rd, 1 on Lincoln Street, and then there's 4 that have been listed online that depend on the Basalt Commons building. I reached out to Robbie Kimmelman, who was the realtor for that project, and the project's been delayed, but these are publicly listed online, so I just wanted to specify those as well when the Basalt Commons project comes to fruition. But now moving on to pricing. So the average building price of those 21 buildings is $1,071,550. But the median is $765,500. Now that's a stark difference, and the reason is that the range is quite large. It ranges from $210,000 to $4,250,000. That 4 million being for Clock Tower Ales, that building. And then when you look at the office lease pricing, that's more condensed. It can be anywhere from $525 a month to $1,300 a month, or $11 per square foot per year. Now going to the square footage, the average lot square footage for those buildings is 16,179, and the average gross square footage is 9,872. And for the leasing for those office spaces, the average lease gross is 2,303. So now we're going to put all of that together. I identified 241 businesses within the CPC zone. So what makes up that 241 is 136 service businesses. So that's 56%. That's over half of the retail mix of that CPC zone works within service. Now, 56 is in retail. That's 23%. 37 businesses are in food and drink. That's 15%. And then 7 entertainment, so that steep drop going down to the rest of the business types. That's 2.8 to 3%. 2 in the information sector, around 1%. 2 landmarks, around 1%. And then 1 nonprofit. Now, of these businesses that have been identified, there are 226 buildings that are unique from those businesses. From the 241, there were 205 that were identified, and then there's 21 vacant, which adds up to 226. And now we get to the vacancy rates. So 21 of the 226 buildings identified are reportedly vacant or listed online, which adds up to a 9.29% vacancy rate with the Dalles using the data that I've aggregated over the past 4 weeks. Now, my report to come over the next 4 weeks will be using all of this data and analyzing it, of course, taking my time to understand what's actually happening, how good or bad is that 9.29% vacancy rate, and then ultimately publishing that report, giving that retail mix that I think would benefit the Dalles. Do we need more service? I don't know on those 5th, 6th, 7th streets where it's 100%, but I'll be doing that kind of practice in the weeks to come. So if you have any questions or any comments about the data, please let me know. And thank you for listening.
Evan, are you ready to take a question or two if there are any at this point?
Yes.
Any questions from the board?
Really quick,
Yep.
what the follow on from this, what can we expect in the future from you? As far as like presentations and data gathering? And do you need any help?
The future for me right now is going to be looking at leakage. Do we need more of a certain business type or less? So in the future of this project, this is like the main data that I've worked through, and that vacancy list is ongoing. So I think the information for me that's useful is because it's so loosey-goosey with those office spaces, for lack of a better phrase. If you hear or know of any buildings that you think are about to leave or are struggling, just based off your experience living in the Dalles, I would really appreciate understanding your opinion as to why or the names of those businesses or business types. You don't have to specify businesses, but like if you think the service industry is really strong, really helping, I'd appreciate that kind of feedback because I do want to hear the people's voice. Because going forward, this report does really depend on what is the demand. This data is the mix. What is the demand? And looking into, do we want to fulfill a certain demand or take away from a certain demand? So just your experience with different business types succeeding would be really helpful for that next stage.
Board member Emery.
Just, do we have a copy of this? I would love to.
You'll be getting an email with this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Evan, one question from me, actually a whole bunch of potential questions, but one just to throw out for fun tonight is perhaps working with Jacob, Mr. Anderson, and just noodling on the vacancy rate and the costs of the going market rate compared to other maybe other communities, and just thinking for a minute on whether these are drags or harms, yes, but maybe also opportunities. If you see opportunities for us to be really leaning into, if we have a surfeit of a certain kind of building or something else that we, insight that we can use to sort of market or help support entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
If we have feedback, does emailing you work best, and will that be included in, will we get that in your contact information?
We can make sure you have his email address.
That'd be wonderful.
Fascinating stuff. Any other questions for Evan tonight?
So other things that, you know, we can use this for, we've never had a downtown business list. You know, we spent a little bit of money to come up with all the businesses that are within the city limits and as good as we can get for contact information. But we can use this list and also work with the chamber and our other partners to try to get email addresses and phone numbers for all the businesses on this list that he's creating. So in essence, we're creating our own distribution list that we may or may not have had. We definitely at the city did not have a distribution list at all. And so this is the foundational work for all the other projects we have coming. So while this is, you know, this is great information to know that we have a 9% vacancy, we had no idea what it was. And so that really helps us in our conversations when we go talk to other cities and other communities and what they're seeing, both in Eastern Oregon as well as Western Oregon, and see where they align in terms of their vacancy rates. You know, one of the issues that, you know, we have is this dichotomy where if you ask a business owner, they say rents are expensive. If you ask a business owner, they say rents aren't enough to cover the cost of that business being in there. And so I'll talk a little bit later about what Pendleton's seeing and some of the great things that are happening there.
Great. Looking forward to the conclusion to this work. Thank you for your good work, Evan.
Thank you all kindly.
Without further ado, we'll move along to item 8, the Urban Renewal Ideas Matrix. And I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Anderson to carry on, but I guess I would say, Jake, would you kind of help us walk through the approach that we want to take this evening and sort of maybe the two-part nature of this conversation?
Yes. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This has been a really fun project to look into to get your ideas about where we want to see urban renewal. This also plays into the city and economic development because so many of your ideas didn't have much to do with urban renewal, but they had a lot to do with economic development within the city. And so I will be taking all of these ideas and integrating them into the economic development strategy for the city. And so thank you so much for taking your time. What we tried to do is there was a lot of projects. I mean, there were 51 different ideas and each one of you might have said the same thing a different way. And so I tried to put it all together in a logical, rational way. And 51 was just too many bites to try to take at one time. And so I broke it into 3 ideas, 3 categories. One being the capital side, what can we do for private capital, private investment? One being the public side, what do we want to invest in when it comes to urban renewal? And then the other one that you guys, I was really surprised at. So many people had ideas for policies, ideas, you know, changes in city functions and how we manage things. I'll definitely be sending some of those ideas over to community development so that we can, and you know, the great thing is when I went down through it and I tried to not have any bias in there, but I was like, oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're working on this. Like, this is a goal. Like, this is so many of the ideas that we have on here are being done in some way. But what we want to do today is to really distill down what direction you want to go. How we walked into this is at a previous meeting, I said before the end of the agency, we'll have between $4 and $7 million to spend. And so that's a great number. Where we go to spend that is what we're talking about today. Some of these ideas we can run right now. You can direct me as staff to start working on them, and they don't have much of a cost, but they do have a whole lot of time suck on it. And so I wanna get from you your ideas. What are your top projects on here that if you had were able to submit your ideas, what are the top ones that you see? As well as if you didn't have any ideas, I'd love to add to the list. And if something comes up in mind and we can add to these. What I didn't want to do is just go through them one by one because we could spend 2 hours talking about one of them because I know how easy it is to get off on a tangent. And so what I tried to do was give us an idea of how we can do for the discussion. And I guess to talk about the base, when I look at this in a broad terms, I go, if we have $4 to $7 million, how much of that do you want to spend on private capital investment downtown? How much do you want to put into the businesses versus how much do you want to put into the public side and the public services? You can look right now, First Street is well and destroyed and tore up, and we found some shells, and I'm not going to say it's a shell midden, but we've got a whole lot of archaeologists out there that are digging around in the dirt in that fill. So I can't promise you we're going to have on the higher side on the 7 million, because every time I see an archaeologist out there, I see dollars and cents of ours going away. So we don't know what our total funds are going to be, but if you go down there and take a look from the right side of the fence, you can see we're already finding things that surprised us. We didn't know that there was a tunnel underneath Second Street at one point, and it was filled in. There was a tunnel there, and so nobody knows. So we're finding all sorts of things down on Second Street, and it's like walking into the history in the past. Hopefully that tunnel won't cost us anything, because it was filled in at one point. But it's just the interesting things you find. So with that, that's a lot of money. I mean, we're looking between almost $7 million in public investment that we're investing into the public side. We're investing a little bit into the Federal Street Plaza, and we've invested, over the last 30 years, we've invested a lot of money into public projects. And we've also bought a lot of buildings and gave them away or sold them, however you want to put it. And we've invested in a lot of private side. And so going forward, my personal thought is we want to make the downtown as welcoming and warm and beautiful as possible, because there probably won't be another urban renewal down here for quite so many years. And so you want to get it to as top of shape as you can, so that it's thriving, so that businesses are able to, and property owners are able to reinvest in their own property, so they don't need public dollars. I think when you look at where downtown is today from where it was 20 years ago, it's come a very, very long way. And a lot of that has been due to the investments from urban renewal. And so we're in that really fun section right now of, we have money and what do you want to do with it? There's not many public agencies in Oregon who can say they have money and they want to do something with it, right? Most agencies, it's what are we cutting and how much is the pain going to be? So with that, that primary driver goes to, what do you all want to see? What are those key projects that you want to see? I gave us an idea. Is it to increase the downtown occupancy? Do we want to fill in? But when I was writing this, I didn't know what the occupancy rate was. So I just know that when you go downtown, nobody likes to see a vacant building. 90% occupancy is actually fairly good. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. You're always going to be having turnover. You want to have some occupancy so that there can be growth, but 90% was higher than I thought it was going to be. Or do we want to spend more money on the private realm, on the public realm? Do we want to invest in trails and other things that are beautification? Do we want that to be the main driver, or do we want that to be secondary? And do we say, we've spent enough money on underpasses and roundabouts and things of that nature? And it could be both. Do we want to pick one or two catalytic sites and dump a lot of money into it, like we are proposing to do with Basalt Commons? We could take all that money and do one project. And so a lot of that comes down to what you guys feel in terms of the goals. Do you want to spread that butter around, or do you want to slop it on one thing and do something big?
So I'm going to tag in here for a sec, and let's make sure we're all on the same page. So we have I'm going to restate a little bit, but try and drive us forward. So we have a lot of project ideas, and also concurrently, we have a fairly healthy amount of money to spend in the next several years. So we're proposing for this discussion to go through a few, as you'll see discussion on page, no, it's page 2 of the handout. It's page 13 of the packet. Just have a board conversation that gets at these questions, and it doesn't lock us into anything, but gives staff direction. And then we'll go from sort of the very broad overview down to sort of fine grain details towards the end. And I guess I envision this being potentially a 2-part or 2-meeting discussion. One is get through as much of this as we can this evening, give direction to Mr. Anderson, have him come back with some refined vision that we can then say yay or nay or make tunings to. Correct? So far?
Absolutely. I could talk to you for 2 hours straight, but I want to hear what you guys have.
And this discussion is not to say the exhaustive or exclusive work plan for Jake and company. It's philosophical and matter of priority and emphasis. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Excellent. Say no if it doesn't. Otherwise, I'm moving forward with discussion question 1, which is, in our opinion, what should be the primary goal of urban renewal in the next 1 to 1.5 years. And as you can see, we've got 3 options, or really 4. And I would like to hear folks' thoughts. If we have to have a priority, and we do in this life, what do we think, again, not the exclusive area of work, but the sort of first emphasis for urban renewal ought to be in the coming 1.5 years? Yes.
I'm going to recognize I did not send ideas, but there was a tourism conference that I was a part of several years ago while I was in business, and something that they started with that I thought was really wise, that we are lacking often in this town, is the idea that a lot of us are going the same direction, but we aren't working together.
Mm.
And so I think that's what I'd like to see starting. Rather than like starting with like, let's create a goal that is a project, let's create a system that can support the projects we want. I think that there's a lot of like well-meaning, well-intended people that are doing a lot of hard work that could be shared among a lot of people. So if we were to leverage the people that are doing work that I'm seeing through all of these, like the art center with artists and the chamber along with Main Street and the community college and their maker space, all of these things are things we already have here that we don't need to reinvent the wheel for. How can we, instead of having like all of these little arrows going in the same direction, make a big arrow and funnel them through so that we can actually get things done? And I think that would be my first kind of like caveat as we go through tonight, although I am not the chair by any means.
Thank you. We have, as you see, I'm going to bring us back to the structure that we have tonight. Discussion item 1, A, B, C, and I think you are describing D, other board specified, make a big arrow. Presumably that could be a strategic plan or something like that, but it may take some other, hopefully more kinetic form. Yes, like figure out some.
Stakeholder meeting, bring people together that have a vested interest in.
And you think urban renewal is the vehicle to really make that happen downtown?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'd hope so.
All right. Other thoughts? You now have 4 options before you. Come up with another if you wish.
I think that you're very much going down the right path with the work that Ethan is doing around getting more information. And I think that when he's had time to analyze the information we have, what our ratio of businesses mean and what we need or what we have too much of, we can be very pointed in the businesses we're supporting or incentivizing. And I think that if we do want to move forward with, decreasing vacancies or incentivizing certain businesses to come in, we need that information, and we need to make sure that we are in our incentive programs are specific for the businesses we want. So yes, information, and also I think that rather than picking a couple of big projects, what we really need is momentum, and we're starting to feel a lot of momentum downtown, and we have been. But I think the more things we can get done that are obvious for the community to see, the more momentum will spread to private industry and to the farther community, and will reframe the way people think. So I think that it's more work to spread it amongst a lot of projects, but that's the direction we should probably go.
Would it be fair to say, I'm shoehorning you back into the structure, that you too are leaning towards the other board specified, similar, a similar idea at its core as board member Lilovic described, in terms of getting a coherent big picture sense of where we are and where we're going, backed up by data that we are now collecting.
Yeah, like say we wanted to do decrease the downtown or increase occupancy. We don't want to just say, okay, $10,000 grant to any new businesses that want to come in, because then we'll get all of the empty buildings filled up with service industries. We want to, we need the information, and we need to know what we need, and be very thoughtful.
Thank you, Beth. Other thoughts?
I thought it was interesting when you said, the people that rent out the spaces don't think they can get enough money, and the people that are trying to pay the rent, or the rent's too high. And you mentioned Pendleton. I'd be fascinated into any success stories out there that are dealing with the same problem. Maybe Pendleton's got some good ideas, I don't know, but there's other towns that are dealing with the same problem. And I think from my perspective, there's a bit of denial here in the Dalles, and it's probably common in other towns too, that, well, we just got to look at the past to figure out how we're going to get occupancy. And I think the future is that you're going to struggle to have retail in a town this size. So what kind of businesses are you going to have? What is it that the residents need? What is it that, if you're going to have a expanded tourist type structure, what are they going to spend money on? I've heard entertainment, food. Seems like, restaurants we're not hurting too bad on, but I don't know what kind of entertainment is going to draw people to drive from Portland to the Dalles. There may be something. So, I'm all for, the comment about one arrow, one direction. I've always thought in the tourism part of it, the Dalles needs to kind of get that kind of a program going. And I often think of Leavenworth, Washington. I don't know how those people manage to do it, but it seems like there's a lot of key people in that town said we better do something and we better work together. And they created a fair amount of tourism up there. But if you have scattered people and the only idea in their head is, I got to figure out how to make a profit for me because I got to feed my family, and they're not working for a common goal, you wind up without much progress. And I don't know what kind of dynamic leader we would need to get everybody on target with a tourism project and even agree on, well, this is what we think we can build here in the Dalles that will actually bring people here. But I don't really see the tourism thing as urban renewal's main focus. And, I know that everybody wants the town to look really nice. Who doesn't want a town that looks nice, But to focus on, well, we've got to get these business spaces rented out and everything. I don't know what kind of dynamic leader we would need to get everybody on target with a tourism project and even agree on, well, this is what we think we can build here in the Dalles that will actually bring people here. But I don't really see the tourism thing as urban renewal's main focus. And, I know that everybody wants the town to look really nice. Who doesn't want a town that looks nice, But to focus on, well, we've got to get these business spaces rented out and everything. unless there's a town that has come up with a magic way of doing that and stuff, I think we're kind of heading in the wrong direction if we think that's our main goal.
Thank you. Thank you, Walt. Jill, did you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was going to wait and listen, but I am so happy to hear that there are other board members who are thinking about D. I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. I've lived here for almost 40 years. And when you say the Dalles, I don't know what our identity is. So I have some concern. I'm hearing tourism, I'm hearing retail, I'm hearing restaurant. What is our identity? What should we be building around? And I've talked with a lot of the other agencies. The port is looking at doing projects, Park and Rec is looking at doing projects. And so I really agree with that shared vision. A couple of them have already agreed. What a great idea to get everyone in a room and at least have a conversation. Apparently that used to happen and it stopped happening. And so whether we collaborate, at minimum, we need to be aligned with a shared vision to know that the individual projects that the agencies are doing are, great analogy, arrows pointing in the right direction, that we're aligned on whatever the vision of the Dalles is. Because I hate to say, at almost 40 years living here, I don't, if somebody asks me, what is the Dalles? I can't answer that with an identity. And so it concerns me that we would spend money on housing and retail and all of these things downtown. And if you don't have a viable business sector, whether that means tourism, retail, or restaurant, it's not going to support that. So I do think that we need to do some more work.
What's the identity of Pendleton and Roundup? Is that their identity? I mean, I'm thinking of what towns do have an identity, you know? I don't know. Leavenworth kind of does, but
Leavenworth does, Hood River does, yeah,
what's Hood River's identity? Windsurfing?
outdoor recreation, for sure.
Those are tourism-centric identities. I'd like is if we were to have that big conversation to not be locked in, personally, to not be locked into a tourism identity. I think we have other things that we could build around that would be about us and our community and making it real. If we have an interesting and lovely functional community where people can start businesses and raise families and all of that, and then maybe a few fun or additional neat draws that are good for us, tourists will find us.
Mhm.
You know, we don't have to build for other people. We build for ourselves. That's just my 2 cents. But since I've got the microphone, are there other thoughts on this particular question and conversation? Counselors, do you think?
Pondering.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay.
Please.
So Marcus, I think, had number 41. He said, develop a coordinated brand identity toolkit for the Dalles in downtown that partners can use consistently. I think that's a great idea. I think there's so much heavy use of AI currently that it's become really difficult to distinguish between what's real and what's easy. It's hard to see, like, I love this town. I've not been here for 40 years. Been here for 12. But I do think that we have a lot of really key pieces of infrastructure just based on where we are. I think that we have like the Columbia River, we have the wheat fields, we have cherry orchards, we have sunshine. There are a lot of really beautiful things about this place that make it very habitable. And I think a lot of those things go unnoticed because we're so used to them. We have wildflowers, and a lot of those are popping up right now too. And I think that so much of what we have here is so naturally beautiful that we forget that a lot of places don't necessarily have that.
And you feel like I'm now just
Yeah,
fellow board
me
member.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel that we could have a fruitful conversation along this identity or the big arrow conversation with a focus downtown? Is this truly an urban renewal?
Yeah, I think if we could look at the downtown area and say, okay, how do we want to market our downtown outside of this area? But like, I think as we do that, it could be a reminder to the people locally what we do have. And I think if we have the ability to do that in a way that does pull in like different stakeholders, it could make a really cool opportunity of allowing our work to reach beyond our, 5 blocks, 6 blocks. I'm bad at estimating distances. I'm
Actually,
so
like 2 miles
sorry.
long. If you look, there have
so
been,
bad at it.
it's narrow and skinny, but anyway, yes,
Yes, it is.
yeah.
But just all that to say, like, I think that we have an opportunity to really create something that is maybe it's not like physical property, but it is intellectual property.
Hmm.
And I think it's something that could outlive this board. That's all.
You have any thoughts, Jake?
I would just point everybody to policy and operations matrix number 27, downtown and stakeholder brainstorming session, business owner heavy, structured dot voting. What you guys, in my mind, what I'm hearing is you're talking about is a thing that I've been talking about since I came here, and that's an economic development strategic plan that pulls together all of our partners and everyone and gets us in an arrow, one big arrow going the same direction. And so I believe that urban renewal has a piece of that, a very large piece of that. But is that the most important thing on urban renewal's list for the next year? That's where it comes down to my question about priorities. I agree with all of you. You are all leaders in the community, so you're thinking about the community as a whole. So I would expect you all to be thinking this way. And as soon as I can get my head above water on all of the other projects I'm working on, I hope to really start kicking into that economic development strategic plan so that we can get everybody going the same direction. We've had a lot of really fun projects that the city's been working on lately that's been taking up a lot of my time. And I'm really excited for that. With that said, we're creating the backbone of information to help that economic strategic plan. That's what I brought Evan on for, so that we know where we're at, and that's just downtown centric. That's not the rest of town. So we're not going to have that information on the rest of town. The rest of town has industry. We don't have any industry downtown. We used to. We don't anymore.
Ironworks.
Yeah, I guess there is the ironworks. You're right. There is one.
So I would say this is a very interesting conversation. Does it help move us forward at this point, or do we need to chew on this a little bit more? Does it help you to come back and say, okay, I've refined some thinking? Do you need more from us?
So I guess
On this particular,
where I was hoping to lead this is two things are coming up. Biggest thing is we have our budget for next fiscal year coming up, and I need to know how to start breaking that up. I submitted my preliminary budget, and so I broke it up in a few different ways because of, this is a couple of months ago, and I was listening to what you guys were saying about different directions that the board has never went. We've never invested in really businesses, tenant improvements, things like that. We've always invested in the physical structure. So that was one of the areas. We've always invested in the public side. We've done some investments. We've got a lot of money set aside for the incentive program. But since that time, you recently created the new exterior refresh pilot program. And I can tell you that we've already had 2 applications that have made it through the process that are about to start working on it. And I've got 18 other businesses and buildings that are in the queue who are looking to get started on that. So, we put $100,000 aside, and if every one of them takes 7,500, that's going to go over my $100,000 budget. That's an amazing thing, because that means, what are we doing? We're beautifying downtown. We're cleaning up some of these buildings that need a little bit of an uplift. And I think that floats all boats downtown, right? That helps it make people want to be downtown. It's a perfect time to do that, because we're about to invest $5 million in the Federal Street Plaza, which we want to turn into the living room of downtown. So how do we? And I think Chair Richardson, you said it really well. Is if we build it for the people that live here, other people will want to be here too.
so I'm gonna very gently throw an elbow here and be like, all right, agreed with all of that. Is that, are we collectively feel like we're getting a hold of part of this conversation and getting some sense of consensus on it? Obviously, we need to spend money, and we have programs, and those are going to be going on regardless. We're not starting from scratch. we have big commitments and big hopes, and those will continue. I think the nature of this conversation is, in addition to those, what do we want, Jake, in our efforts to be moving along? And I'm hearing that this is time for us to agree or disagree on this. I'm hearing that, yes, we want to invest in the programs we've set up and keep those going. And also, in terms of your question, like a big priority needs to be maybe something that's not budgetary, something that steps back and is more visionary in leadership. Does that track with what other people are thinking and saying?
I want to kind of back up a little bit. You identified some of the projects that are already started, and I agree with the idea that First Street and other projects are going to continue to cost more than originally thought. So I'm kind of a caution type person, like, let's not spend down to zero and then have these projects incomplete because we ran out of money. So we kind of have a pile of money that we want to spend on urban renewal, and we have a certain amount of time to spend it because at a certain point we can't spend any more. Isn't that correct?
So as long as the projects are identified, you can continue spending the money past 2029. What happens in 2029 is we stop making money.
Okay. So, we kind of got a heads up, I think, from the project that isn't ours, it's Parks and Rec, the pathway along the creek, that they're expecting cost overrun. And I totally expect them to come in here and say, can we please have some more money? So those are things that I think is going to possibly, we need to contact them and try to figure out if we need to budget for that. Because if they come in and say, can we have some more money? Well, we didn't budget for it. Then I guess the answer would be no. But if there's something that this whole group can say, this meets the goals of urban renewal, and it's a fairly good sized project, and it'll spend most of that money that we're sitting on that we gathered up, and we want to spend it on urban renewal. Right now, I don't see that there's some project or some concept that we can all say this is maybe the last big shebang we're going to do before this urban renewal sunsets. And if we can't do that, then we can try to spend it out in little increments. But I guess that's what I would kind of expect, is that we can find something that the last big project we want to do, if that's possible.
Let me gently sort of take the reins for a sec, Walt, just so that we can get everybody else in on this question. So I think you've heard, again, please correct board members if you feel like things have moved along or gotten off track, but I think you've heard from the board that a major priority for discussion, question one, is the big arrow, some leadership, some visioning, Jake. And I'm going to push the board, say that's great. And also we need to spend some funds, as Walt was saying, in a somewhat thoughtful fashion. And we have three options, the A, B, or C. Do we want to give Jake some direction with regard to spending those funds in a conceptual way in the next year and a half, in terms of an emphasis, a priority? Should we, if you look, we've got increased downtown occupancy and invest, so basically reinvest in the buildings that are here. Do we want to underwrite some additional public projects, maybe trail system or other things? Do we want to unlock one or two catalytic redevelopment? Do we want to identify and really push maybe another one or two large projects along? What would be the emphasis?
For example, what would be your idea of those projects?
I have a couple that would leap to mind. Potentially something that repurposes or rehabs the Discounts Plus store, maybe something that might go on the Tony's lot. The Tony's lot would probably be the most obvious. one that's not already lined up and in progress. Is that fair?
I was really amazed when I went through this whole list. Tony's was not mentioned once. And I don't know if that was because everybody just figured it has to be on it.
Well, remember the genesis was like diversified and small bets, not big projects. It was like, we already have that. That's the list was like, what are the smaller things that we could pursue in a more entrepreneurial fashion? That's the question. Okay. Yes, Jill.
I think one of the things I think about, and I know that Jake and y'all probably were hearing this theme with me, is going to what fits with urban renewal and then going back to the plan. And one of the things in the plan that stuck out at me this last time when I reread it was what we do will attract more private investment. So I want to keep that in mind with what you're asking of those projects that we might want to do in the short term, that they're going to attract private investment as well.
Yeah. So I think that is a very good lens or useful lens to look at this question. Which of these three areas, so not specific projects, but areas you think would most likely move that along?
Probably not going to like my answer because that's where I think it's going to take the other agencies and that broader vision to possibly attract more of that. I don't know that just one specific thing that we might do downtown is really going to bring what I envision. I think it would take a little bit bigger vision. That's not an easy answer. Sorry.
Other thoughts?
Go for it.
Sure. So I've done a lot of reflection on this since I've been on urban renewal the last 4 years. And I'll tell you, here's my 2 cents. I think that we absolutely need to finish the Tony's lot, and that needs to be a major priority over the next couple of years. And in fact, I'd like to have something on the paper like next year. Like, what are we going to do with it? If it's an empty lot with gravel and a nice black chain link fence around it, I'm going to lose my mind. So I'd like to see something in the next 12 months that moves that forward, right? Like, it took forever to get First Street moving. I don't want the Tony's lot to become the next thing that's like
It's
killing.
taken a while too. That one's dragged on for.
Yeah. So I think that over the next 12 to 18 months, in 18 months from now, I would like to see something happening on that site. And I think it's incumbent upon this board to make that happen, with working, of course, with you, of course, Jacob. And I think I think in my mind, in our district, that's like priority number 1, right? What are we going to do to attract a developer and get that site up and running again?
What does that look like? A new RFP?
There will be, yes.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the place to start. I think we need to bring, I think we need to, initially we did an RFEI, right? I think we got some good responses and some good ideas, but like they didn't happen. I think we need to, personally, I think we need to put together an RFP. We need to put it out. We need to get responses from it from people that are first off serious about it. Not that people weren't before, but this is something that we need to get moving forward, and we don't need to do another request for interests and ideas. We just like need to bring in serious development, get that thing moving
Bring
forward.
a business plan and some capital.
Yep.
Yeah. And if that's probably going to require somebody, whoever comes in is probably going to ask for some sort of other development funding that could come from urban renewal, right? I don't know what that looks like, but I would fully anticipate that if another developer came in, they're going to want something.
Counselor Tim, you have thoughts?
I do have some. Well, as far as what I know about the Mill Creek project, which is the walkway, and I did talk to Scott Baker about that because that was a concern about cost overrides and where are they going to get that money. But in his prediction that they were going to diminish some of if it's a 12-foot expanse, they're going to move it to 8 foot. So they're going to reduce some of the footprint in order to save money so they don't have to return for money for that purpose. So at least people are looking at adjusting projects because of the cost overrides. The carousel is one of those things that will bring tremendous amount of, I believe, tourism dollars, and I believe that it would be really attractive for our town, but it's where you place that. And what has to happen if we took all of the buildings away and we were to build a city, what would that look like and where would we put, and like everything is organized in a particular place. And right now we have some options because that property on, we call it Tony's, but with the a park there, and then the store owner that's right adjacent wants to develop that storefront and bring people in. So you have an opportunity to really, in that one particular area, to really create something magnificent. And you have a walking path, you have a park, a carousel, and if that store owner would develop that property into something that attracts people, I think that's where urban development comes in, is setting the expectation and the insight into what that possibilities could be. There's another parcel that's being sold as you come up from the underpass from the boat basin to the right. There's the old upholstery shop there, and that property is going up for sale. And in my opinion, that is a prime location for tourism, for people coming off the ships and walking up into our community. If we were to have something developed on that, at least something attractive, some type of I don't know, I had like Fort the Dalles, where you have like a old replica of a fort, and on the interior you bring in activities. You could have a Mountain Man Festival, you could have Native American powwows on the interior, and then you could have small retail shops. So that's an idea where if you have everything organized like down First Street, once that becomes usable again, and I also had an idea of making that into the old fort. Well, it would be the old Dalles going down with boardwalks, and you would have modern buildings, but you would have small retail along that first in order to make it into a tourism, not a tourist trap, but it would be, but what we need really is a good tourist trap too in the Dalles.
This is not a tourist.
So I'm just giving you some ideas
Oh.
that
I'm hearing from you. You want, you like, and I think very much like Councilor Brin said, a focus on what Jake calls a catalytic redevelopment, a big splash. Pick something that really makes a mark and put some time into it.
I believe that the carousel is something that we really need to focus and make sure that gets completed in a timely fashion. I believe that would enhance, no matter where it's located, it's going to enhance. But what if, that particular piece of property in that area were developed for enticing people to come into the area and using that area itself. So our responsibility is to give the vision of where are the monies leveraged in order to, number one, produce vitality, jobs, economic development, all of those things, urban development. That was part of what we were focused on, correct? In the early days, although it has moved away from that at times, but I think we have a responsibility for bringing it back and focusing really on what benefits what makes the best sense to create something that's going to produce either an image or something that's going to produce vitality. I think that's.
Thank you. I'm
going to give you one more because
going to throw a very soft elbow because I'm really going to try and get us to answer this question. And we're almost there, but I've got to census a couple more board members. So
what happened Friday ago, I drove down through the Dalles on a Friday night, and whoever devised and put that activity on Friday and Saturday night.
The Hoot Music
I saw it, and, you know, that's going down the right road, because what that did, every side street, every main street was packed with cars that night on Friday night. And I came down, and I've been here 52 years. And, you know, I do tell you that the Cherry Festival over the years, Lisa, has grown immeasurably. Every year it gets better and better. And that just brings people to our community. If we keep doing that and finding ways to keep activating our city on the weekends, more and more people come in. If you come into our city at night from either the west and you look, it's impressive when you come around the corner. And if you're coming from the East Coast and you're coming around the corner by the dam and you see the city with Mount Hood, I don't know of a better, and what we need to do is monopolize. You ask about what our image is. Where can you buy a refrigerator in Hood River? Where can you buy a car? Where can you buy all those essential things? That's, the Dalles is a shopping center of our entire region.
It's the place where you live and not just play. Yeah, bet. Councilor
I rest my case.
Do you have thoughts on this question of the priorities for the next year? In addition to the visioning, where would we really want to spend time and money? Where would we want urban renewal to really focus on?
The carousel is one of those things that I believe that
Yeah,
we
heard.
need to
Yeah.
follow up on. And I don't know how much involvement we have, but
If we're thinking in 12 to 18 months and we're picking A, B, or C, my vote would be on B. I think that it's about setting up downtown with what we can do as urban renewal, not as Parks and Rec, not as what private industry should be doing, to start building that momentum. And we'll have time to pinpoint what those projects are. And I'm right with Tim. I've been thinking about the carousel too. And with what you said, Jill, what is our identity? I think that it's accidentally happening where it's the Cherry Festival has really put the emphasis on cherries. That's a big element. And the murals, which has been growing a lot the last 5 years, that's a really big thing for us as well. And it's these outside influences and people coming together and creating things. And then, yes, with the carousel coming in, I mean, we could pick any one of these things down the road. We have time to say, okay, we are the home of, you know, the country's oldest carousel. We could incentivize businesses to push that. We could do more, whatever. But what we really need to do is start building that momentum to get private industry to spend their own money.
Thank you, Councilor Ben. You already chimed in. Thank you. How about?
Well, I do have one more thing. So
Okay.
the other thing that I think we've also spoken about getting together with folks, and I think the thing that like my personal schedule has been a disaster the last couple of months, so I haven't been able to meet with people, but getting together with folks, and I think like one of the things that you and I and others have put together, or idea that we've put together, is that action group, right? I think the thing that I have yet to hear is what a business owner or a tenant or owner operator or just building owner needs that the incentive program does or doesn't deliver on. There's a lot of people talking about things. My inbox is empty when it comes to getting those ideas to somebody in the city. I have not received very many emails at all. I could probably count on one hand in the year and 2.5 months now that I've been on city council, and even longer since I've been on urban renewal. If people don't come together and tell us like what they need, like your incentive program is great, but it doesn't do this, or we're missing something that helps us out with like, some other problem. Nobody's coming to the table and nobody's telling us. So we're going to have to make the best decision we can with limited to no information from the people that we're here to help. So I'm saying this on public record because I want to put the challenge out to business owners, property owners, like blow up the inbox. That would make me, I'd be ecstatic and frustrated at the same time if I, woke up on Saturday morning this week and had like 6 emails from somebody downtown. I would be ecstatic, but I've never seen that in the whole time that I've been here.
Can I just append to that? Facebook does not count.
No, Facebook does not count.
I'm moving us along. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I hope there are no bruises, but we gotta like push forward. Kristen, you're the only one I haven't heard from on this specific question since the big arrow. Of the other 3 things with regard to dollars in the next month or year to 18 months, where would you personally want us to be emphasizing?
I think B is also where I would land. Public improvements that change the downtown experience and redevelopment readiness. I love and totally agree that we need outside capital to come into this town. I grew up very religious, and over again in my head, like I keep hearing like without vision, the people fail.
Mm.
And there's no vision here. Like there is some from a lot of different people, but if we don't have a vision of what we want to build, how can we expect other people to come into our town and do that? It's just, it seems like putting the cart above the horse. And so I think that if we were to invest in our own community, that would make it more of an attractive place for other people to invest.
I think you've now heard from all of us on this question. I'm going to take a deep breath and say, we're pushing through for right now.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't know if we need to move on to number 2.
All right.
I think we would have the exact same conversation again. So I guess what I can do from here is just talk a little bit about some other things that we have that's going on that might answer some of your vision, your dream, your ideas. As you know, Joshua and I have been working on the University of Oregon Sustainable City Year program. And so what that is we have access to a multitude of college courses and classes to do projects. And I brought some of those. You heard about it last month. And so I was reached out to about doing a project this spring quarter with Business 308. And it was, it's the first upper level class in business. And so the idea is, what could we do? What could add value by getting a whole bunch of people in a room, coming up with ideas? And I thought I had access to one class. It's actually 3 classes of the same. So 36 groups of 6 students. So 36 times 3. So about 100 individuals. And so it was really tight time frame. And so what we've got for the update today is I broke it into three separate classes into 3 separate ideas. And 2 of them revolve around the Federal Street Plaza. And so one of the main things that we've been talking about is we're spending a bunch of money on the Federal Street Plaza. How do we activate that plaza? What are our ideas for activating that? And so I've got an entire 10-week course of students, just like how Evan's working, that can work on those ideas for the activation of the plaza. In terms of programming activities, you talked about the Hoot being so successful. They're going to be coming up with ideas to activate the plaza as well as ideas.
Will they be looking at other plazas as well?
They're going to look at what other cities are doing and try to come up with ideas. The one that stuck out to me today that I love listening is that somebody brought up the wildflowers. We have the wildflowers. You've got two mountains surrounding this city that are chock full of people for almost an entire month who drive from Portland and everywhere else to come to the Dalles Mountain Ranch and the hill over here behind us to look at wildflowers. Do we have a wildflower festival? Are we marketing to that wildflower group? Are we trying to get them to come downtown and stay in our community? That's a whole month you could focus on. You could set that as a brand for a month. That's something, and I'm sure the chamber's like, yeah, we've done that for years. You just don't know about it, Jake. See, there you go. Chamber's been marketing that to visitors for years. But can we do more? And I'm sure I will get to see more about what the chamber's doing tomorrow when she reaches out to me to let me know how far off the ball I've been. So the other thing is so we're looking at how that group is going to look at the plaza in terms of that living room, in terms of not just saying we're going to do something on the weekend, but how do we do things during the week, both morning, afternoon, and evening? So that's what one of the classes is going to focus on. The second class is going to focus on how the plaza interacts with the outside area, the areas outside of it, how we can incorporate the business community into the plaza, as well as looking at the Craig building as a catalytic site because it's currently empty, as well as looking at the transportation building because it's currently empty. And so when I had originally designed it, I thought I had one class. And so the third one I broke out, and that is the Tony's Lot, because that's, as I keep hearing, the Tony's Lot is so valuable. We've not only spent a lot of money on it, but it's going to be sitting there right next to it. And what is the value of that? And so that third class is looking at this in terms of looking at it from their point of view, using Evan's information about what we have and don't have, because about the same time they're getting started, we'll have a good understanding of what we need downtown. Do we need mixed use development? Do we need more entertainment? What are we lacking compared to other communities? And what's going to drive people to come downtown? And so each one of they're going to split up into groups, and you know how business students can get competitive, and they're going to try to come up with the best ideas to create something successful on Tony's Lot. That'll last for 10 weeks. And so I figured by the end of that 10 weeks.
When is the end of that? I'm sorry.
Starts March 10th and add 10 weeks, and I'm not doing math in public. And so at the end of that 10 weeks, my thought is we'll be starting well into construction on the Federal Street Plaza. We'll have all of Evan's information about downtown. We'll have some ideas about how we're going to market the plaza, how we're going to activate the plaza. And then we'll have a bunch of different ideas. Huh?
Sorry to interrupt. And we hopefully should know about Basalt Commons.
And we should know about Basalt Commons, which is the catalytic site for downtown that we're heavily invested in to get people living downtown. And so you add all that together, and then you add all these ideas that come out of the kids. And then what do we do as soon as we get done with that? We go out for an RFP based on what you guys all see is the best idea that comes out of the kids. And then all these students get to say, look at what we designed and help create. The RFEI was a great process. We got three applications. Do I think that that's all of the ideas that are out there? Because those ideas were, well, I guess, two of them were private in nature. One of them's quasi, nonprofit in nature. But what other ideas are out there? What are we lacking in town, and what do we want to see? How do we how do we make that whole area be where you want to spend time with your family and your loved one? And I think that's what we'll get out of that. So in answer to your question, I like asking all the questions, and then I never ask a question if I don't have a solution. So these are kind of the solutions that answer some of your questions that I'm looking to activate. So my question to you is, do you feel that it is worth $7,000 of urban renewal money to have one of these classes work on the Tony site for 10 weeks?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to hear a nodding of heads from people, but yes, do that.
Yes.
What is it that we would get out of it?
Your deliverable is currently still being worked on by the teacher who's going to come up with the syllabus for the class. But in my mind, the deliverable is you're going to have a list of ideas, at least 6, for the Tony's lot. You're also going to have hopefully minor pro formas, something that then we can go out and market and say, you know, whether it's a mixed use development or maybe it's a carousel, someone's going to have to come together. So they're a business class. So they've got to not only come up with the idea, but they've got 10 weeks to refine that. Look at the marketing side of it. Look at how it's going to interact. My deep dark goal is to have the different classes talking to each other so that they can also, because my idea is to take the information from all three classes and create not only a report, but an actionable item of how we truly activate the plaza. And when you add it all together, I think the light bulb will come on for everyone.
Well, this is through the community college.
No, this is through the University of Oregon Sustainable City
Got
Year
it.
program. We don't have Business 308 at the community college.
However, if you look at that, if it's student driven and researched, the outcome could be that one of those students or two would say, yeah, I would like to invest my time and start something in the Dalles. We may be able to pull some young folks to do this, to develop programs. I think it's a good idea.
I've got all sorts of master plans behind the scenes for why I want to engage with college students, left and right.
There's good possibilities there. We have to keep our young people in our city and developing, like right back here, you know, Michael was a graduate and he's still here and contributing. We need to keep a lot of those young people, plus bring in graduates or students from outside into our community to keep it vibrant.
So I'm hearing a lot of parallels between what you are undertaking and what you've heard from the board. Is this desire for sort of bigger picture thinking and coming up with some.
So I just
Plan
wanted to
forward.
let everyone know, the number one, the Federal Street Plaza programming speaks to your number 39 in public space. The transportation building, Craig building, district integration that also includes branding, because you've all been talking about branding, speaks to policy section number 14. The Tony's lot stands on its own because that has always been a project. We have in the urban renewal consultation budget 25,000. I've currently spent 13,500 this year. Most of that was on attorney's fees, but the $7,000 cost for Tony's lot, I don't have. It will fall within the budget. So it actually fits this year just fine. So that's why I was looking for a consensus from the board that is something you'd like to invest in, because I know at the last time when the board heard from the Sustainable City Year program, you weren't willing to say, yeah, we're willing to throw $40,000 into it next year. I think what you're seeing is this is how I'm looking at not just doing projects for project's sake, but what I'm looking at doing is how do I take what I can do in a day and multiply that by 50? And I can do it for very cheap. When you look at what Evans produced so far, you look at if I hired a consultant to come in and do that, we got a rough estimate. That was $12,000 for what Evan did in 4 weeks by himself, and you've got it for about $350.
With regard to the rest of this proposed sort of discussion, do you want to?
I can keep going if you'd like.
No, I'm not asking you to keep talking. I'm asking you to help me navigate through what would be useful from where we are at this point. You've got a bunch of these pretty sort of small project ideas, a scatter shot of them.
Well, I've got more we can talk about too. That'll pull it all together.
You want to pull it all together?
You want me to keep going?
Can you pull it all together?
Give me.
Let me finish thinking out loud on this for a sec. Would it be useful to refine this, concentrate it down, and say, we're already doing, we're already engaged in this, and this, and focus it down to like a next conversation, or how would it be useful? None of these touch. Oh, maybe they do.
I've got 30 minutes and I can keep pulling in more of these to show how we can do more of the projects on the list, if you'd like.
What's the pleasure of the board? Do you want to hear more from Jake about how he's going to touch on a variety of things, or do we need to go a different direction?
I have one clarifying question
Please.
before we go there, but go ahead, continue.
I'm done.
So when you were talking about the students and the study and the $7,000, I was a little bit confused. That's for Tony's or the Plaza?
$7,000 is for Tony's,
Okay.
and then each of the other two classes are $7,000. I was planning to use economic development dollars that I have budgeted for those two projects so that I'm equally kind of putting it between the two. Even though there's going to be urban renewal benefit on the plaza as well as on for this class 2 on the branding and other things that are going to affect downtown.
Okay.
That also hits on what you guys are talking about is that change the downtown experience that you kind of picked as your.
And so that produces some ideas, a marketing plan, some identity. So newbie question, when we did we're talking about doing an RFP. Do we do that internally? What's the cost associated with that?
Putting together an RFP.
Yeah.
I wasn't around when we did the RFEI. It takes a fair amount of my time. It takes a fair amount of Jonathan's time.
Is that
But we put together, we put together RFPs all the time as a city. So, and with the RFEI, I think, it's more of massaging it. And I don't know if an RFEI or an RFP is the right way to go. That'll be a lot of conversations that we can have with Jonathan. And a lot of that, I think, will come from the discussion that we have with the students and what they come up with. Because you all might see something new that you're like, we want an RFP for this project. This is what we've decided we want on the Tony's lot. This is what we want to see. Bring us your proposals, community.
I think that's where I struggle a little bit. And again, not my wheelhouse. That we sort of put the idea out there versus ask business developers what their idea is to bring money. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit. Again,
What we did last time was ask people to bring ideas. We've got this prime lot. Bring your ideas. And they did.
Are you suggesting we approach it differently this time then?
So what I'm saying is if we let the students come up with ideas, we might have some interesting thoughts that might be in the public realm versus the private realm. What you'll be able to do is take a look at it. It'll help you guys factor in what you would like to do next. And then that decision's up to you on whether we go out and ask the business community, this is what we're thinking. We want to have something here. I think what we don't want to have something on that lot is to just ask the business community, because if you just throw it out there, do what you want with the lot. Well, half of the ideas might be stuff that the board doesn't want to see on the lot because it doesn't help the plaza out. I think what you want to do is you want to tailor that and narrow it. And when you do that, that lets the business community know what you want to see. And then you're letting them compete with what you want to see.
It really would jumpstart a structured conversation
Precisely.
around Tony's towards the beginning of summertime,
Precisely.
after we would have these other downtown contextual study done, and we would know what's going on with Basalt Commons, God willing. All right. Yeah.
You guys already agreed with the 7,000. I was done talking a long time ago. I was ready to move on.
Let's move on.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I honestly, I don't understand spending $7,000 for ideas, especially for people who do not have likely the money to implement them. I think that I would agree with Jill that we should ask people who have capital they want to spend what they want to do on that site and see what comes of it. There's no cost to that really, but that would just be my opinion. And once again, not fully my wheelhouse either, but we did a lot of outreach with downtown business owners, with people who engaged with the Federal Street Plaza. There were a lot of ideas about what would complement that space that I think are free. I don't know why we would go for more ideas personally, but I might be wrong.
Well, I think it's more than the ideas. Coming up with the idea takes 1 week. You've got 9 weeks for them to put together business pro formas, to put together ideas about what would make sense. It'd be really nice if someone did a real pro forma on what a carousel could potentially produce.
You're saying essentially they would do research on that idea, whether pencils out or what they're-
And I'm going to make sure to get them all of the previous information from what we did downtown, and they're your deep research arm in essence. And then, you know, we've put it out there to the business community, like, what were your ideas? And we got, you know, 3 ideas,
one of them was carousel.
and one of them was a carousel.
I personally would like to see a real careful look at carousel specifically, because we do have this one in town. We know that they have interest, and I would like to just see others. If there's an example of one that has really activated a downtown that we could draw from in the Northwest, or if there's been, because I have no idea. There may be 10 carousels and they've all gone dark, or they could be the highlight of a town. I don't know.
I have 3 elementary school children, and we go to Seaside for the carousel. And that is an example of kind of a 2-block little area that Seaside is a huge tourism hub for because of the recreation. It's the arcades and the carousel and the little shops around it. So I think that that's a good example of a carousel activating a town and bringing in a lot of folks.
That's great. So you would agree that doing that dive into that particular question would be valuable?
Very much so. And like Tim was saying, this isn't just like asking for more ideas. This is helping us develop a vision that really could potentially start with the plaza and expand to Tony's and First Street and throughout downtown, but it's got to start somewhere. And this is more, you know, vision cementing than business ideas for a lot.
The owner of the Craig's office came to city council, and he was very adamant about developing that property and creating an adjacent space to the park and the plaza. So if he were to do that and it were to develop, just think of what it would attract from outside, either tourism, but I think it would just really be, you know, a highlight for our city when people come to visit. They would remember it when they leave or come back.
Oh.
So and not only would they give some ideas, but they'd also do, you know, what are the potential, what could, you know, other properties around it develop? What would be the impact as far as financial? Those are the types of things. How many people potentially would visit the Dalles because of that development? So I think I understand what you're saying about ideas. And I'd like to say one thing about, there is a small group of people that are meeting together, and Jake is part of that. And we meet with business leaders, with retailers, and it's a small group. And we discuss these things as far as what would we like to see our city become in the future? Where are we now? And also taking a look at all those potential to make things better. That's always improvement, always taking a look. And I think there are active people. There are some things that are happening around us as well, just because of some of the conversations going on. And there are some outside developers. There are some financial people that are looking at our community. One thing we have to do, though, is prevent the barriers to developing and say that we are welcoming and we would like to have anyone and help them along. The Raylan Hotel have done a remarkable job if you haven't stopped in there yet. But there's potential right there, and they're putting money in. We have to find a way of supporting them and including them in some of these decisions. And so I'm just saying that there's potential. I just wanted to make you aware of some of the things that are going outside with some of the dialogue that's going along. So it is happening around us.
Thank you. Councilor Ring.
That would be great to hear, because I've been on city council for a year and 2.5 months, and I have not heard a lick of this.
All right, you're on the list.
So that would be very helpful in making decisions that this board needs to be made, is to like have that information readily available to us. Because if we don't, again, we're not hearing from people that we have set up these programs for. And if they're not going to come to the table and tell us that what they need, then we're not going to be able to do anything differently or more effectively.
So the Raylan's a perfect example of something that we invested $50,000 in, and we didn't have to invest $1 million in, but it got done because they have equity and capital, and that's what you usually want to work with. You know, we always think about equity and capital coming from outside of the area. That's what we like to think about. But in small, middle-sized communities like this, a lot of your growth, your BR&E, comes from equity that comes from inside of the area. And it's getting your own community to buy in on it. And it might be 5 or 10 families that invest in something to have a success. That is one of the most successful ways that you help grow your business community, is not expecting someone outside to come in and save you.
True.
You don't always get a Google that drops in and drops $1 billion or more, you know?
One more thing I'm going to add.
Sorry, nope. I'm going to gavel you people into quiet here for a minute.
Can I talk about the budget?
No. We are all going to respectfully listen to a fellow board member who's being very patient. Board Member Amory, you look like you had something to say.
Thank you, but I'm okay. Let's.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm going to gavel somebody for something. Yes. Let's put a bow on this particular conversation for right now. I feel like we've got a lot of big things. I do want to hear from the budget, and I also want to say one last thing myself. So someone
We're gonna gavel you.
somebody mentioned there was once large conversations in town, and if I recall, about where are we going, and if I recall, that was really right before COVID. I think COVID disrupted that, and it was around that game show, essentially, that was like, we're going to come in and save your downtown. And I don't remember what the name of that was, so forgive me. But there were, I think, a couple of conversations where there's like literally hundreds of people at the Civic, I think was the last one, which was heartening and encouraging because people are interested in this conversation. Who are we? Where are we going? Specifically downtown. I was always a little bit curious about that because we don't need to wait for someone to come in and rescue us. We have the funds and the talent and the people here. So that's what I have to say about that. So yes, talk to us about the budget.
So what I provided for the 2027 budget, for these are the big pieces. And usually what we do is we just put all the leftover money into the incentive program. And then if we spend it, we spend it. If we don't, we don't. It makes budgeting really easy. But knowing that we were having these conversations, that we were looking outside of the box of what we've tended to do in the past, when we're talking about, improvements that change the downtown experience and the redevelopment readiness, things that are looking a little different. So what I did is I broke it out to put $300,000 into the community support program, and that can be whatever this board decides that it could be, whether you want to spend it or not. It's just what I was doing for trying to break this out in terms of a way that's logical, that the public could understand that we're looking at different things. The incentive program has $824,000. Basalt Commons has $1 million for the incentive program and then the Basalt Commons DFA has $730,000. And then the opportunity-driven projects, which we've kind of like let slide the last few years, I put $300,000 into that. The great thing about budgeting is, as long as it's within that main category, we could spend it for whatever we want. But this is just for budgeting purposes. And I was looking at different opportunities because I knew this conversation would be coming, and that you guys would likely be coming up with different ideas on how to spend the money. What I did do is I budgeted for the total amount of money that we thought would be for the First Street Plaza or First Street project, remaining in First Street. So I didn't use what the bid came in at. We've got a healthy contingency in there because Walter and I both had that same concern that the prices is likely going to go up. So this is what we have available. So if you want to think about it in terms of money that hasn't been appropriated, it's 824,000 plus another 600,000. So that's what you have for this next year to spend on what you'd like. There's a couple of projects that came to mind, not knowing how this conversation would go. And I did promise that I would bring back Pendleton because I was talking with the urban renewal development program head in Pendleton. And I said, what's working and what's not working over in Pendleton? And he said, the thing that's been working the best for them is they have a business expansion and creation grant program that they run every year, and they run it once a year. And they started in 2022. And what they do is they give out $20,000 grants to somebody who wants to start a business or somebody who wants to expand their business. And since that time, every year they've got more applicants than they have money available. And so the board ends up choosing which 4 businesses are going to get to start or expand. The new businesses coming in look at the available lots and they pick the unit that they're going to want to build into. And he said it's been wildly successful. They've had 16 businesses since that time start or expand. They've got another round coming this month. 12 of those businesses are still in business. One of them never got off the ground, and 3 didn't make it. So they made it 1 to 3 years. But what they said is that's the cost of doing business, and it's still a good investment, and it still kept that space full for a time. And he said it's had a positive impact on the downtown in multiple ways. They are now at 90% vacancy, so a 10% vacancy rate. And what they're seeing is that their lease rates, their rent rates are starting to go up because there's more demand for the spaces downtown. That means the businesses are making money, and that also means that our long-term goal is the building owners being able to continue to keep up their buildings so that they don't fall into disrepair happens as well. And we could run a grant program like that. It would be a lift. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a lift, but it's something that we could invest in so that we're investing in those businesses. What you're going to have is, remember how it all comes together. You're going to have Evan's entire program that tells you what we have downtown, what we have on each street, and what we might like to see down there. And so if you'd like, you can open it up. Any business can come forward, or you can say in the downtown quarter along 2nd Street, we want to see more of this type of business. We would entertain that, and we can give additional points to that through the point scoring process or whatever that is in order to invest in these businesses. But I think when we've got a lot of square feet that are open. We don't have a whole lot of buildings. When you look at, 90% is a good number. What I don't have is I can't tell you out of the total amount of square feet downtown what percentage is available. That would take Evan working like another 6 weeks in order to figure that out, as well as working with Jill to find out the square foot of every building and then doing all the math. I mean, it's a huge amount of lift. So I think this is about as good as we're going to get if we want to get him diving into more details. So when I look at that, so this is what a sister city has said has been successful. This hits in the private capital matrix. This hits number 8, number 9, number 10, potentially number 11, number 13, and number 15. So of your ideas, this hits a whole litany of them, and that's on the private capital side. Because if I was a betting man, I would have guessed you would have picked the private capital investment because that's what we've been investing in and for a long time. So it also helps on that next part because when you look at the economic development strategy, business retention and expansion is usually one of the top things in all categories. when you look at economic development strategy. This is, in essence, our city goals for economic vitality. Developing a business retention and expansion program is one of the main goals that the city has set for me. So not only does this talk about what is in your guys' own list, this also talks about what's in the city's list for something that the city would be interested in business retention and expansion. If this is something that you're interested in, I can look into it further. I'm not saying you have to choose today. What I'm saying is that this is something that we can talk about with the budget committee as a potentiality, because this could fall into your community support program that's budgeted at $300,000 in the preliminary budget. If it's something you don't want to do at all, I can throw it away and go do other projects. But this is something, because I always try to bring a solution to the issues forward that'll hit not just one of these. I'm trying to hit a lot of them.
So you're asking from the board a nod of heads whether the board would support exploring a small business startup or expansion grant?
That would be the question.
I think that it's a good idea to look at experiments other towns have embarked on. I don't think we'd be taking a big risk. I think they took the risk to try it out, and they said it worked. I don't know why it wouldn't work here. I would be very interested in some input from them on which type of businesses failed and the ones that seemed to go well, so that when we get to the day that we're deciding who we're going to give $20,000 to, that information would be very valuable to me. I don't really want to invest in ones that are likely going to fail.
I like the idea, but I feel like it's too soon, that we don't have enough information yet. I want to make sure that we are investing that money in the right places to the right businesses.
Kristen, thoughts? I'm taking a soft census here.
I think it's a great idea.
Excellent. Ben?
It was along the lines of something that I know I put on the list. So
Yeah. Sounded familiar. What do you think, Beth?
I think that is kind of definitionally urban renewal. If it was just new businesses, I would be more hesitant. But I like that it is an opportunity for current businesses to expand and be even better. I would just ask that part of the vetting process is a good business plan that we could look over.
So some of the other ideas that you can do, nothing's free in life. You can make sure, like a new business, you can also partner them up with the SBDC Center. There's a lot of things that you can do to help make sure that they can be as successful as possible, because we have a whole lot of other entities in the community that can help along the way, including the Chamber of Commerce, MCED. There's a multitude of support agencies to help businesses.
Counselor Tim?
I support the idea,
I do too.
and I think that
Sorry, please.
tying it back into college, if we can integrate a lot of the young people that are going to college up there, if we can entice some to stay in the community and develop and grow, that's what I would encourage.
Okay.
I like it. I think it's a small bet and a good one. If we put in 5 grants at that, it's $100,000, which is real money, but Urban Renewal has that, and that's less than a single big project, which might be multiples or a single, upstairs apartment renovation.
That is the hard thing when you think about the amount of money that, you can go through the IP program right now and have and put in 2 apartments and get $300,000.
Yeah.
And so what's going to have a bigger bang for your buck? I look at the $7,000 and, I might be a lot in my personal life, but in the money we're playing with when we're doing $5 million projects, 7,000 is not even budget dust. So when I'm looking at these things that can have transformational or major impacts on the community for a small amount of money, that's where I'm coming from.
100%.
Think, when we say we're giving the money away, I think we're investing for a return from whoever. So that there's some meat and skin in the game. And that's what I would encourage, invest.
It would need to be in the urban renewal district for X number of years.
That's the
And
way you set it up. You have to put the parameters.
yeah, absolutely.
So one other simple idea that's come up in the past that is public space improvements number 17, and that is we have trees downtown. They're not very big. We're watering them every week, and we need a little bit of color downtown. And so this is something that can be urban renewal as well as working with the beautification committee, and that is getting some downtown flower baskets on some of our street corners. So the idea would be we could invest in some flower baskets at 3 intersections, so 4 poles for 12 different baskets. What we could do is work towards adding, we could do the watering with the watering contract for the trees. And then the way the baskets aren't cheap because they have reservoirs in it, so you only have to water it twice a week rather than twice a day. And so this would be one of those super small, like, because remember when 2 months ago you were saying, bring me small wins. And so this is one of those small wins that would be a pilot test project. You look at a lot of those cities that we talk about with tourism along the coast and in other areas, they have the beautiful flower baskets downtown. And we don't even know if it would work here. Sadly, Second Street doesn't have water on it when we did our Second Street streetscaping project. And so we've kind of come up with good ideas on how we're going to keep this going. So that's another idea. I put a budget of $5,000 if that's something that the board is interested in as a pilot project. And now that you gave me this new project to look into, this is something I would try to push off into the beautification committee and say, here's a little bit of money. Here's the work I've done so far. If you guys think you can be successful at it, we'd love to see what you can do.
I think they would take it and run with it. I think they would run with it. Yeah.
One other thing that is in line with a lot of the things we have talked about that I would love to put on your radar as it is on the sheet as a low priority. As someone who just did a renovation downtown, something that almost tanked my project was something that, and you're wondering what building owners experience. If you want to do a renovation, putting a shovel in the dirt triggers property improvements that can be outrageous. And it would have probably been a dead on arrival situation if I wouldn't have gotten some help with property improvement costs. Another thing, I was a block on the right side of downtown, so the system development charges were affordable, but it was still something I had not budgeted. It is rough. Number 11 is system development charges. If you want to open up vacant buildings, if a building has been sitting vacant for more than a year, it is designated vacant in code. So in order to put a business in there, it's going to trigger system development charges that building owners cannot afford and a new business coming in can't afford. And
That's even if it's paid system development charges in the past.
I believe so.
Because I just did it on Mary's lot. Josh and I went through it, and because of the connections and the number of employees that were there in the future, they got a reimbursement for the portion of the SDCs that were there previously. So I can look into that some more.
Yes, and also most small business owners are not going to, or building owners are not going to have access to the lawyers and the calculations and all of that to get that reimbursement. I know I was thinking, oh, I'm putting River City in this corner. It's a food service. This was food service before, so that's fine. And they're like, no, even that, you're not just moving, because I was moving it from office to retail, most of the building, but that corner, it was going from vacant to kitchen or service or whatever. And that was a separate renovation slightly. It was a little after, and that was another $20,000. And so we want to encourage private investment, and I would be terrified to put an upstairs apartment because then you have to pay for a change of use for part of that building. There's all of these little things that happen that is very scary. Or if you pull a permit, then the county comes in and they're like, hey, you need to get up to code here, here, and here. And then there's a spotlight on your building. It is very scary to do renovation.
I think that's one of the other things, and I don't remember if I put it on the list to you or not, but one of the things we've talked about at city council even is removing, or not necessarily removing, right? Because we need to have some ordinances need to stay, and they're hard and fast truths that we need, right? But if there's any like relaxation or exemption or a review of things that the planning department requires of businesses when they come into a new development or upgrading something or whatever, place I think that you're getting at that would be good to.
The planning department is fantastic. They are also, has felt like very worried about, they want to do everything right. And so there's not the flexibility that someone who's been in that position for 30 years would have to work with business owners. It kind of is just letter of the law. And if there's any, it does feel like it falls under urban renewal, and it might be nice to move system development charges or hurdles to development higher up on the priority list on your sheet.
These are not in priority, just so you know.
Oh, excellent.
They were just
I think that could be a very interesting addition, next study for a business class is to come start a
Josh has some of that planned for his classes, is looking at
starting a business in the Dalles.
regulations and all that stuff.
I would love to see you guys walk through that process and trip over these tripwires and be like, oh my goodness,
So one thing
figure out
that
what those are.
that does bring up is we will pay up to $10,000 per SDC on residential units. We do not have anything that allows us to pay for SDCs on commercial units. And so like with Mary's project, we are paying for all the SDCs on the residential, but the first floor that's all commercial, we cannot pay for those commercial areas. She's also maxed out at the $1 million anyways, but her total amount is over $1 million.
I forgot about that. What's stopping us from helping that? Because it seems like urban renewal should be able to help with commercial businesses in that way.
The thing that's stopping it is the board's direction to the program that it created. And the board can change that at any given time.
Something we could do.
Yeah.
In the next 12 months. We could do it in the next couple months.
If I may, Betsy, thank you for sharing something that I wouldn't have known.
Oh.
So good to know. And is that possibly a barrier of our vacant downtown?
Just in order to get occupancy, let's say I could have moved into that building, used it for office space, in order to just change the occupancy, that alone triggered property improvements, which I had sidewalk entrances, but it was one grade off because the law had just changed. And so the entire corners had to be ripped out and bulb outs had to be put in, which thankfully the city helped, I believe, 50% with, which was wonderful, but it would have shut down my project. And so that just goes to show, if there is a empty building on a corner without a sidewalk entrance that's the right grade, in order to put a tenant in there, the property owner would have to spend $100,000 potentially.
Those are great public-private partnerships.
Does the board feel like that's a valuable area for Mr. Anderson to explore and bring back as a proposed action for us?
Can we summarize what that would be?
Yes, please.
So what I heard is you'd like me to look into commercial SDCs as a potential use for urban renewal dollars, and which I wanted to say there's no program that would allow us to do it right now, but there is such thing as the development funding agreements that you can go outside of it. So somebody could come in and say, hey, I can't do this project unless I get these SDCs. And so that's part of those negotiations and conversations that can be had. You are so fortunate that you have somebody who's actually developed downtown and redeveloped downtown and knows the hurdles and has been through the brownfield program, has had to pull tanks out of the ground. Sitting on your board, that's exactly what you want, because a lot of these conversations, you have the people that have experience doing it. In terms of, I mission creep is one thing that I'm always afraid of, especially with how busy I already am. And that is looking at those regulations. That is something that definitely sits in the community services department. You all know that Josh and I work hand in hand, and so he is absolutely looking at efficiency and ways that we can do it. But the truth of the matter is the laws continue to become more and more stringent, and every time they change the building code, it adds cost to everything that you do, both on the private as well as or the residential as well as commercial developments. And it's got to the point where if you want to do anything, it's so bloody expensive. And those are things that, like, when we adopt the commercial plan, that's what they have to follow, right?
I can understand that, and I do sympathize to that, but I also know, like, as a downtown business owner and property owner, like, there's a lot of things that the city could do to relax things that would still be within the auspice of, like, maintaining the law, right? Whether it's a state or city or county codes thing that needs to be enforced. But there's ways to relax that. And I think that that's the thing that I would ask is, I'm aware of what Josh is working on in the planning department as far as, like, we've talked about, like, a starter kit, right? Had I known that when I bought my property, if I knew that I was going to have to go back like several times to an architect and cut a check for $500 to $1,000 every time I had to do that because somebody had one question. And then they came up with another question, totally unrelated, and I write another check. Like, those are the types of things that there's policy and relaxation and, like, things that make sense, like the kind of a common sense approach to development that we continually need to look at. And I think we do as a city, like a city council planning department. But like, these are also things where, like, urban renewal could come to the table as part of our existing or expansion of programs or something like that offers the financial help, right? Had I known that there was a 50-50 sidewalk program when I opened my business, I would not have paid 100% out of pocket for it, right? But I didn't know about that like 10 years ago.
We didn't have it 10 years ago.
Maybe it was 8. This is like 2019, 20.
Like sidewalk programs only a few years.
50-50 was right before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyways,
your point is valid. Yeah.
but getting that information, like, pulled together and concatenated, and then having urban renewal funds available to help offset some of that additional costs, I think is exactly where we need to be.
I agree.
Well, we have 3 city councilors sitting on the board, so I hope that you're taking this back to city council to direct
Absolutely.
to direct the city manager, to direct staff to look into these things that I know staff is looking into and is working on. But what I'm hearing is if I can find a class that can do a deep dive into what relaxations in terms of regulations could have, that's something that urban renewal would be willing to invest in.
I think
That's actually not a bad,
that's
I
I
great
think yes is the answer. Yeah.
Identify what those barriers are.
Yeah.
We have a policy as of last meeting of trying to wrap up with 2 hours of our time. I feel, Jacob, that you have a lot to cogitate on and work on. Do you feel there's any big blank spots that we need to address this evening?
I just give some simple updates.
Yeah.
We closed out phase 3 of the Legion Hall incentive program. So the door framing and drainage was done. We closed out 210 Washington Street, which is the vapor barrier and insulation. The old post office is still making progress. And I have had people that are interested in the incentive program due to the exterior refresh pilot program. So we are getting interest in that. So I have a feeling at the end of all, you're going to be having to make the hard choices of who you give money to and who doesn't get money, which is a lot better place than just taking whatever somebody comes in front of you.
I have hopefully a quick question for you. We got an update from Basalt Commons, I think today. There's a meeting
Tomorrow.
this week about the VHTZ. Do you
That's-
need a statement from the board or any direction from the board about trying to get some decisions made in a favorable manner?
So everyone, I hope, had a chance to review that. I don't, that's given in private, but there is a discussion with the vertical housing board. So what had happened is when we created the vertical housing tax zone, the junior taxing districts have a choice to opt in or opt out of that. And so what the vertical housing tax zone does is it gives tax breaks for the square footage that are put towards residential use above the first floor. And that's one way to get downtowns to invest in upfloor housing. For the Basalt Commons projects, that's up to that's 80% for 10 years on the project. So 80% of the taxes for all of the taxing districts that opted in. We had one district that did not opt in, and that was the Parks District. And Miss Hanlon is going to be going in front of the Parks District tomorrow to see if they would be willing to opt into the VHTZ for her project for all of the multitude of benefits that her project is proposing for downtown and the value. And so if the board would like to support that ask, I'm sure she would be more than happy to accept that if the board wants to remain silent. If the board wants to direct me to speak on the board's behalf, I will be attending that meeting. So that is the board's prerogative.
What time is that meeting and where?
It is above the, I believe it's 5:30, and it is above the pool.
Rec,
Yeah, it's the Parks and Rec office.
got it.
Thoughts from the board? Do we want to provide support or direction of some kind to Mr. Anderson? I don't know enough about like the rest of the story with regards to that, but however, you know how much emphasis we put on this project and support, and we think as an entity that it is as you might say, a catalytic project downtown. Sometimes other districts might have to be reminded how singular and important projects of this size are. So for my part, I would say, yeah.
A little background.
Yeah.
So 2014, so I'm speaking as your assessor and tax collector.
Thank you.
In 2014, this program was brought to the Dalles, and there was at the Hunnell building a development done, the first one that took advantage of it. So they've been paying for approximately 7 years. 2019, I think, triggered it. They were done. And so they have actually been paying Park and Rec, because Park and Rec opted out, their tax portion. So just through the lens of a program and equity and what's happened to date, I'm very neutral. I'm going to be at the meeting tomorrow with my day job representing, being able to answer questions and give numbers and facts, and not taking sides on recommendations or not. But from an equity standpoint, I would ask you to take a look at that, as we do also have another local developer who has been paying for 7 years. And when speaking with the Park and Rec director, what happens if the board is asked to opt out on one program and make the other one pay from an equity lens? And again, I'm staying neutral. I've been supporting Mary as the assessor and tax collector and helping her with the information and her presentation, and I will be there to support her in that capacity.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, the Urban Renewal District is going to be investing to Parks and Rec by paying the SDCs over $500,000.
I'm not following very well. I don't understand all this. So I don't want to take up I don't want to hold up the meeting or anything, but somebody wants to explain.
I'll explain it to you in my office, Mama Jane's.
The first thing I'm thinking is, how did Parks and Rec opt out? And because, you know, I represent the fire district and I don't know.
How'd you guys opt out? Yeah.
Well, I mean, did we miss an opportunity to
That may be,
lower
that may be a
cost, you know?
topic for a different
Yeah.
personal meeting. Anyone else have thoughts on this particular narrow question right the moment? All right. Is
So
there
you'd
anything?
like me to remain neutral then at the meeting tomorrow? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not hearing a lot of cogent or coherent direction from the board. I think we need to move the project forward. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I think
If we can.
we just voted last meeting that we're still thoroughly behind the project. And I
Absolutely.
think that if you have an opportunity to say at that meeting that the Urban Renewal Board is fully behind the project and that it still has our support.
And I don't know the math at this point with regard to this issue. But as you say, it's $500,000 in SDCs. So they may want to
Yeah.
factor in those things.
And I think there might be some creative ideas discussed tomorrow. Fair.
Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Thank you all for a conceptually rich discussion, and I look forward to sort of the next phase of that. I'm going to conclude our meeting. Adjourned.
Lord Timothy.
Lord Timothy, yes, Mike.